Currently, Ghana sold around 750 million US dollars for its 10-year euro bond on Thursday in its second foray into international bonds market. BAT paid a premium to the investors who were worried about the country's fiscal and current account deficit. Of course, our deficit seems to be soaring with the increasing wage bill. It continuously comes as a concern to investors, but it looks like we're on the way to our bonds being overly subscribed. Though very shortly we'll try and get John Gachi back on the line to seemingly find out if investor confidence in the country is continuously high. We would also try to get an international development economist on the line. He would come in and give us a picture of how the international community is seeing how Ghana is looking like. So maybe very shortly we will get John Gachi on the line, and I'm informed John Gachi is back on the line. A very good afternoon, John Gachi. Let me ask you my first question. Looking at the subscription of the bond, do you think investor confidence in the Ghanaian economy is still high?
Well, I think that is the implication that investors are not looking only into the current situation of the country, but they are looking forward, because bear in mind the bond is not going to be matured today or tomorrow. So the investors are looking out to the maturity period, and especially those who even hold the bond out to half the year period of the 10 years. So I think that is confidence that they have reposed on the Ghanaian economy to the future. So I do share that view.
But John, I painted a picture early on when I had an interview with you, looking at the economy, looking at inflation, looking at economic indicators as a middle income country, looking at poverty margins. Now, for most investors, what were they looking at for reason why it was overly subscribed?
Well, I think the investors are just looking at the ability of the government to repay their money when it matures. And they look at that from different perspectives. They look at it from the major economic indicators. They look at it from the perspective of the GDP. They look at it from the perspective of your deficit. They also look at it, more importantly, from the perspective of your ability to increase revenue mobilization in the country. The reason being that it is not all the projects captured in the prospectus that are self-financing. For example, if you take the road, some of the school projects, the health facilities that are going to be put up, most of them will not be self-financing. But we also have some of the projects that will be self-financing. That clearly indicates that part of the bond is actually collateralized against future revenue mobilization. So investors will clearly looking at the revenue mobilization effort of the country going forward. So these are the key issues that will be looked at.
Well, of course, it tells you that investors are looking at the future of Ghana being bright. I'm informed also that I have Dr. Osafo on the line. He's an international development economist. Well, John Gachi, you do stay on. But, Doctor, let me find out from you. You are an international development economist, and, well, Ghana out there looking bright with the bond offer and what we are getting currently. For you as an international development economist, what does this tell you?
Oh, it simply says that there's so confidence in the future of the Ghanaian economy. You know, the oil finding discovery and even the prospects ahead in the volume of discovery will continue to increase. And this gives confidence that whatever loans we take now, we'll be capable of repaying those loans. That's basically it. We're experiencing some challenges now, but in the medium to long term, I think things will sort themselves out if we continue to pursue prudent policies of managing the economy.
Very well.
The deficit of 11-12% is not good, but it's not traumatic. And therefore, if from now on the government adopts stringent measures in how it pleases the economy, I think the future is so bright for Ghana. But all the money that we are borrowing should be used stringently, and implementation should be very rigid so that we don't waste. The problem in this country is that there's a lot of wastage, whether the money is from our own resources or from borrowing from outside Ghana. So the question is how stringent and how we manage the money that we borrow for various projects that we implement.
Well, definitely this is a thing we should critically look at. I'll quickly move on to some banking developments we have. And gentlemen, I'll ask you that you stay on the line. But even before then, I would want you to be thinking about negotiation. At this point, we're running on an interest of 8%. Could we have bargained for more? My research is telling me that Nigeria, of course, did bargain further down. They got at least 6%. Couldn't we have done better at this point? But even before you answer that, let me quickly add these details to it, and then we can see how we would merge it. Now, Bank of Ghana, that's the BOG, has hinted the minimum capital of rural and community banks is to go up to around 150,000 to 300,000. So from 150,000, they are looking at 300,000. We'll come back to this topic shortly, but you can talk about negotiations now. Maybe if John is on the line, you can start before Doctor comes through.
Okay. Well, I think it's not a bad development to have the minimum capital increase, especially if you look at what is happening in the rural areas. Most of the rural banks and community banks have engaged in microfinance activities. And it has been recorded that there's a lot of risk in that sector. So it is only prudent that the minimum capital is increased to cushion the possible fallout in any risky activity in the future to protect those who are saving and doing business with the rural and community banks. But I think the Bank of Ghana ought to be very cautious about this, because all the rural and community banks do not have the same strength. Right now, it is even very difficult to demarcate the distinction between the activities of some of the rural banks and the mainstream commercial banks operating, especially in the urban centers. So I think that it is prudent for the Bank of Ghana to actually categorize the various community and rural banks and assign a certain level or certain graduation of the minimum capital increase for this bank, because as the report indicates, some of the rural banks and community banks have not yet met the 2008 requirement of increase to the 150,000. So if that is the case, in order to grow banking in the rural sector and to promote rural economy, it is important that the Bank of Ghana also bears that in mind in dealing with the rural and community banks in bulk.
International development economist Dr. Kweku Osafo, well, just also check out this issue where we're trying to grow banks at the rural level. Now, Doctor, is this not stabbing the bank of developments of rural banks to our rural communities?
Yeah, but I mean, I agree with what the previous speaker said, that we are doing a sort of balancing act. I'm a chairman of the board of a savings and loan bank, and the experiences, especially when you start a rural bank or a savings loan, the experiences are not very pleasant. People usually get loans and they don't want to pay. But the bank, I have always criticized Ghana for not doing things in steps. I mean, somebody wakes up, the requirement is 150 and goes to 300. Why can't we start by saying adding, say, 50%, getting them organized, and then a year or two increase the requirement? I mean, this case of everything doubling and tripling is not the best policy approach. But the bank also wants to protect the borrowers. And also, we must also understand that there's a lot of money in the rural areas which are not coming into the banking sector because they don't trust the bankers. So the central bank should also train and get the necessary skills for these rural banks and so on, so that they are trusted and they do their work diligently, and trust is ingrained into the system, which will make the various depositors capable of doing that without any regrets.
All right,
so
Doctor.
We have increased it, but I think we should next time be cautious and not increase it in step-by-step approach instead of this one big jump
of 100%. Well, many thanks. Dr. Kweku Osafo is an international development economist, and John Gachi is a financial analyst, also a lecturer at the University of Cape Coast. Gentlemen, many thanks for joining us on the business segment of Midday Live.